Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Academy. I'm Graham Richmond, and I'm joined by Alex Brown. This lesson is about assessing your academics. So, Alex, people are applying to a school. I think sometimes people forget that. They think a lot about the job after, but this is an academic program that they're applying to. And so admissions officers have a vested interest in understanding the candidate's academic background and sort of readiness for study. So how do you want to, the GPA is something that comes up first, right?
Yeah.
So, and principally in one's undergraduate experience. Yeah. So what are you looking for when you look at someone's transcripts?
Yeah, a couple of things. I'll just take a little bit of a back step. Why are we assessing academics? As you say, it's an academic program. ADCOM is not just looking for people to survive the curriculum. The key is they need to thrive in the curriculum. Why do they need to thrive? It's because there's so much other stuff that you can do in your MBA program, whether it's the club activities and you're being recruited and so on and so forth. So if you're really having to put a lot of effort just to get through the classes, you're not going to have a good MBA experience. So obviously academics is important. This is an academic program, but just making sure that you show that you can thrive. So they're going to look at your undergraduate GPA. That's your sort of base sort of measurement. Everyone applying to top tier programs is going to have an undergraduate record. Obviously folks from all around the world, so the GPA is not always going to be a tidy 4 on a 4.0 scale. Even within the US, some of the scales are different. I think MIT is an example of that. But there are things like your GPA. So there are ways to potentially convert your GPA. You've got to be a bit cautious about that. One data point I really like is the class rank. If schools can provide that class rank, that's quite important. You're also going to be submitting transcripts, so the ADCOM will look through those transcripts and they'll look at things like, is there some quant in your academic profile and so on and so forth. And if you've had, if a couple of your classes within your overall GPA have been less than successful, that will be picked out. So maybe you need to use the optional essay to explain any additional context.
Right. And I think, one of the things that admissions readers like about a GPA from your undergraduate institution is that it's a 4-year kind of measure. So it's not just a 3-hour test, because we are going to talk in another lesson about standardized tests, but there's this idea of a track record of a kind of dedication to your GPA represents your work over the course of, often
it's more
4 years.
Commitment and persistence and grit.
Yeah, and I agree with the transcripts. For one, when I was reading files, I would be looking to see, okay, are there any courses here that are kind of MBA relevant or good kind of foundational courses, calculus, statistics, sometimes exposure to finance and things like that. So they're looking at that. They're looking at whether or not the major was challenging. I know you're a big fan of, what is it? Is it chemical engineering is the one that you always say, wow, that person's probably pretty smart if they survived a chemical engineering major. So I think, as opposed to say if like basket weaving was your major, then that says something else about you, right? So I think, it's important.
I thought you were going to say art history.
I knew you were going to give me, all right, just because I have an art history degree. But I think that you're right. The admissions reader is making all kinds of judgments. And I would actually argue that they're also looking at the caliber of the institution that you attended. Yeah. So, for example, a chemical engineering degree with a near perfect GPA from MIT, that's kind of an off-the-charts, superb thing, right? Yeah. Whereas it could be that a similar degree at an institution that's unknown or unranked or, not top 50 or something, they might take it with a little bit more of a grain of salt. They might almost subconsciously, that GPA, if that person has GPA, maybe it's knocked down a little bit. And they'll be looking at the test or other areas of your background to kind of coordinate around and figure out if that GPA is a true measure. But so that's important too, the caliber of the undergraduate institution. Yeah. What about international schools though? Because I think a lot of candidates who are applying from somewhere other than America are worried that the school will have no idea if the undergraduate institution they attended is any good.
Yeah, recognize that ADCOM will have institutional sort of expertise all around the world. They've been admitting folks from your region, for quite some time. So they will have an understanding of the quality of education in different parts of the world and which are the more recognized programs and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But any additional insight that you can provide in your application, again, use the optional essay. So if you know yours is the top engineering school in your country, then it might be worth expressing that just to make sure there's clarity there.
Yeah, and I would argue that some of the schools in the admissions office even have kind of lists where they'll say, okay, in this market, these are the schools that are really, the top 10 programs in this country or something. So they do spend time getting up to speed. I hope people, are aware of that, because it is sometimes people don't understand that. What about a GPA that you might have from a master's degree? So I know people are applying for business degree, which is a master's, but some already come in with another type of master's. Could be engineering, could be computer science, anything, right? So does that matter? Is that GPA more important than the undergraduate GPA, or?
I don't think it's more important. I think the undergraduate GPA, because everyone has an undergraduate GPA, that's the standard. That's what you're going to be sort of measured on sort of fundamentally. But having the master's degree on top of that can absolutely add to your academic profile. There's no doubt about that. And maybe if your undergraduate GPA is not outstanding, yet you then went on and did a master's and performed well, that can help what we might call transcript repair or something if you did well in that master's degree.
Agreed.
So those are two things to consider. Also consider if your master's degree is business related, then is there some redundancy in doing this MBA now? And actually AdCom will red flag that.
Yes.
So, if you've just done a master's in management and now you just want to do an MBA, that's probably not going to resonate well with AdCom. And then the other sort of potential red flag is if you've got 3 degrees already and now you want to do an MBA, it's like, okay, this is a degree collector.
Right.
I'm not sure they're going to be the sort of student that's ultimately going to reshape the world and have impact, which again is part of the goals of what we're looking for top caliber MBA candidates.
And I think you could argue that degree collector is like, maybe they're a career student. That's all they're doing is going from one degree to the next. I guess the only other thing that I would say about, the master's space is, you're right. It can be a form of transcript repair. It's, I think, the only exception on if someone has a business master's and they did it immediately upon graduation from undergrad, then I think with an optional essay, they can make the case that now that I've worked, I'm really keen to get back into the classroom and bring that work experience into the kind of laboratory of the classroom and learn, because I was not ready, and so the MBA can be useful in that respect. But I agree with you. When you see someone already has a business degree, it gives you pause. It's a little bit of a red flag. Is there anything, when it comes to transcript repair, which we touched on with a master's, there are other ways to improve upon a low GPA from undergrad. So what are they?
So if you've got the low GPA, well, there's two issues here. If you've got a low GPA or you've had some problems with some classes, even with a progressive trend or whatever, or if you have an art history degree or a basket weaving degree or whatever it might be, what you're really going to need to show some quant chops, because again, the first quarter, the first semester of your MBA experience is going to be a deep dive into a lot of numbers, a lot of stuff that if you're not prepared for that transition, it's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for the school.
Right.
So in that case, there are actually some really cool options for you out there. MBA Math, I think you talk about that, sort of the history coming out of the Tuck School at Dartmouth, is available to you. HBS Core. So these are sort of programs that help prepare you for the MBA experience. That you could also do extension schools type courses. Anything, additional coursework maybe in calculus or economics, sort of macroeconomics or something like that. But there are ways to show either transcript repair or academic readiness for the non-traditional sort of folks.
And the nice thing about both MBA Math and HBS Core is that they're online, so you can sign up. And I think even some of the extension schools at UCLA, Berkeley, they have these extension schools where you can take a class or two just to get ready. And the admissions officers at the top MBA programs are very familiar with all of these, because they see candidates pivoting and wanting to either do transcript repair or demonstrate readiness. So these are tools at your disposal to help be a better candidate in the process. And then the only other thing that I would add is sometimes we get people asking us, I have a CPA or a CFA. So that helps in my academic profile, right? And my answer usually is no. It's more of a professional credential. It can certainly help to show that you're, if your goals are in finance or something and you've got that type of background, okay. But it doesn't, just because you have a CPA or CFA, that doesn't add points to your GMAT score or to your GPA. It's sort of viewed as separately. It's
Right.
more in the professional bucket,
Yeah.
I would argue.
Yeah.
Is that how you viewed it when you were reading files at Wharton?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be quite as sort of clinical about it. It doesn't matter. I mean, I know you say it matters for career, but I think it can have a little bit of sort of additive to the GPA transcript repair stuff. But I think the better approach is the MBA math, the HBS core. The other final thing that we need to sort of evaluate the GPA within the context of your test score. And I know that's the next lesson, as it were, but recognize that, the admissions officer can look at your quant score within that test as another measure, of your preparedness, and because that test is going to be much more recent and really sort of show you in such an environment that you have those quant chops.
Right. So just to give a very concrete example, for me, it's always a red flag if I see a candidate who they're a finance undergraduate major, and then I look at the GMAT or the GRE score, and the quantitative score is low.
Yeah.
And I say, well, wait a second, how good was that major if they can't do well on the math section of the standardized test? So you're right, there is that interaction, really important, and a perfect segue, because up next, our next lesson is going to be all about testing, whether it's the GMAT or the GRE, all the tests that are out there. So we're going to talk about that next on the Admissions Academy.